Hey everyone, welcome to Fans of the Framework. Well, this is something you don't see every day.
Us together.
Yay!
Hi, partner.
Hello. We were just meeting with our newest initiative champion who
Well, not
lives.
initiative champion.
Oh, no, sorry. Newest
Client.
CEO client who lives here in Sault Ste. Marie. Woohoo! Yes. So that was fun. We fed her lunch and did the whole huge thing.
Yes, it's so fun.
So Sue and I felt compelled. We were actually on a walk last week, a couple weeks ago, talking about some of our partners, some of the requests that they've had of us recently, and what we could do to help them while still being accountability coaches and that positive perseverance, passion, positivity, perseverance, grit. Okay, and as you know that we do, and so what are we going to do for these people? And really, kind of the why behind it is that more and more. We're hearing organizations say we have to put a pause on any change. We have to put a pause on any improvements. We have to just stop because there's so much going on now with the roller coaster of the pandemic and all the other things going on in healthcare. We simply can't improve anymore, and we can't put anything on our leaders' plates. And kind of the thought that we want to just convey to you, if you're a senior leader or a frontline leader, it's not how much you have on your plate. It's what's taking your time
Yeah.
on your plate. And it's the dreaded whirlwind. It's just got a different word. It's called COVID, but it's
Never thought of it that way.
yeah, it's the wrong thing, right? It's called not having the right things on your plate, and this is actually the wrong thing on your plate. Now, you may feel completely helpless and someone else put this on your plate and you didn't ask for it. It's not like you're busy from, a great project, a building project that's like fun, cool, busy work. This is crisis work. It's crisis leadership. But, the advice we were going to give you today is how do you not, it's not going to go away, but how do you lead positively and with perseverance through it?
Yes. And, we are the start with why people.
Yeah. Yes.
But so is some other people out there. And so, one of the things I wanted to mention was Simon Sinek and a quote that he had from his book, The Infinite Game. And this book was one of the books that when we created our event this year for C-suite members, which is good to great, great to even greater, is this fact that, we're not playing in a game that has a start and an end when it comes to running a healthcare organization. I mean, the organization we left and had done our transformation is well over 100 years old. So it's not like it's, set up and it does what it needs to do for a year and then it goes away. It's the long game. It is long term. And so there's a quote from that book that I wanted to start with here on the why it's so important to really think about how do we lead in a crisis. And in this book, he says, when leaders exercise the courage to lead, the people who work inside their organization will start to reflect that same courage. When leaders exercise the courage to lead, others will behave courageously as well. Do we need courage now more than ever? We are in a time
Yeah.
of fear. And
Yeah.
so I don't think organizations have always required great leadership. Great organizations require great leadership. They become great. Leaders have a big role in it. It's not just the work of leaders. We say that. We know that employees have a huge part and can play a huge part in success. But this is not a time to be leaderless. This is not that time. So when Jane mentioned, the time that we have as leaders, there's always been 24 hours a day. There's
Yep.
always been 8, 10, 12 hours to your work
None
day.
of you got any extra.
Nope, there's no extra to deal with the pandemic. But there's basically always been 3 buckets that leaders put their time in. Number 1 is working shoulder to shoulder. And leaders that could be no time. It could be a lot of time in a crisis. It's probably more time where they're actually doing the work of staff. So that's one bucket. The other bucket is management tasks. And that might be firefighting, day-to-day operations. That might be band-aiding a problem. That might be payroll, scheduling, firefighting, those kind of things. So day-to-day operations, working shoulder to shoulder, managing schedules, payroll, firefighting, issue of the day, da-da-da-da. Band-aiding, that's reactive and short-term. If we only spend our time there, and we don't lead towards a better future, we do nothing in what we call the third bucket, which is leadership tactics or practices that move something towards a better future, where it makes something not just band-aided, but truly better.
Right.
It's fixed or on its way to being fixed, or a step where it's future focused, improvement focused, goal focused, forward movement focused, those kind of things. That's proactive work, okay? If we never spend any time there and we spend only our time in reactive short-term mode, it's going to be exhausting. Reactive is exhausting. I put a note here. This is my morning thought when I was thinking about this was in episodic small doses, writing a situation, might feel rewarding and even necessary. But when it's the same fires over and over and over again, the hit of good wears off.
Right.
It turns to resentment, frustration, exhaustion, and even hopelessness. Same fires, different day.
And why can't anyone solve their own problems? It's because Stephen Covey quote, when you keep solving the world's problems, the world keeps bringing their problems to you.
Yes. So really, we've said this all along, even pre-pandemic, is that, we need to get through the day. We need to lead our team to get through the day. That's mostly reactive.
Yeah.
But proactively, we need to get to a better future too. So we have to do this in parallel. We can't just wait till crisis is over before we start working on the future. We work on the future through the crisis. And so the whirlwind has always been there. And yes, organizations need firefighters. They always have, but we can't all be firefighters and we can't always all be firefighters, or else our organizations are not going to win in the long game, right? It's going to be ugly. Again, if we're leaderless and there's no time for this, it's going to be ugly. So this pandemic can either break you or strengthen you. It can bind you together or tear you apart. It can be more painful longer.
Right.
If you only just fight fires. So our tactics, and that was a big why, but I think the why actually is more important maybe to understand, because otherwise you'll be no compelled to how. But it's this idea that we can't just totally pause, give up on leadership, on proactive work, on goals, on progress, because there's a crisis. I mean, Jane, our organization where we led pre-pandemic was in crisis. Many of your organizations might have been in a crisis before the pandemic even hit. But actually some of our partners are not in crisis. I mean, they're thriving.
Right.
They're actually thriving in a pandemic. And that's absolutely fabulous. It gives hope,
Don't you think, Sue, excuse me for interrupting,
Nope.
don't you think too that the things that require leaders to fix immediately are those that are screaming the loudest? And that the positive, proactive leadership tactics that move their organization, move their departments forward are quiet. Maybe as a frontline leader, you're not reminded that you were supposed to have been doing all those things. That's what happened to me when I was working for you, until I had to sit down with her at my monthly accountability meeting, and she's like, why haven't you done this? Are you waiting for someone to kill themselves before that? Why don't you have a suicide plan in your ER?
Yeah.
Well, and it's like, I don't know. It seems like I was just here yesterday. It's been 30 days, really?
Really?
Right? Because negativity was screaming.
Yeah.
All the negatives were screaming.
Yeah. So we've always, in our work of transforming healthcare organizations into places where people and results can flourish, we've always prescribed a leadership bundle, core leadership practices that are in that third bucket of things that move the organization forward to a better future, like building and strengthening relationships, tactics for change and feedback and gratitude and communication and the like. So we've always had these 9 core leadership practices that are evidence-based, that we've used ourselves, that we've helped others to do. We've measured the results. We know they help move organizations forward to a better, brighter future. Now, in a pandemic and in crisis, when leaders don't have a lot of time to spend on that third bucket, let's say, is, we have to think, let's get essential. Another great book on that, Essentialism, right? Essentialism.
All your books are read right.
Yeah, isn't that cool? Like, they match. How about that? But 2 great books, The Long Game and Doing What's Essential in the Short and Long Term. But if our time is lessened, do we give up everything? Or what should we do?
Right.
And we'll call this the crisis bundle.
Because really, I think as leaders, you are looking for, what do I do?
Yeah, I can't do everything.
Right. If I can only do one thing today, what should it be?
Yeah.
Because, unfortunately, the pandemic's taken that away from you too.
Yeah.
That ability.
Yeah. So, what's really cool about that is that, there's 3 key probably focuses or tactics you could use, and it would check a lot of the boxes for all 9 of the practices. Even though it's 3 tactics, each tactic might hit more of the leadership practice and the why behind it. So there's 3 of them we're going to talk about today that we think it makes the list. Goals. You'll be surprised. We're going to go with that first. And you think, you'd think that, dropping our goals for improvement or, project would be one of the things that we would drop. We're going to leave it on the table. Okay. Number 2, gratefulness or positivity or the combination thereof. And then relationships and rounding. And we're going to talk about these 3, starting with goals. I'm going to start there. And in our partner organizations at the department level, where you're closest to the patients, you're closest to the work, you're closest to the whirlwind, you're closest to the issues of the day, those 2 buckets are probably bigger that are reactive. When you're in a frontline leadership position, usually we recommend that in a normal year that you would have 2 or 3 goals, 2 or 3 big things that you're working towards to improve in your department that are unique opportunities for you to make something better for the future. And it's usually in alignment to your organization's key strategies. Well, in a pandemic, maybe we take that down to 1 or 2 things instead of 2 or 3. Maybe it's just 1. And maybe it's totally focused on either patient employee safety, so safety, or maybe the other one is in the people pillar, whether that's vacancy rate, well-being of your staff, reducing turnover, increasing retention. So think about that, right? Setting goals highly aligned to what's needed most in a crisis. Right? Top things. So don't give up goals. You got to focus on those things, right? Safety, your people, whatever. So make that your goal. So maybe your goals look different than they did before. Maybe there's less than there was before, but we shouldn't just throw goals out the window because we're in a crisis. Goals are a way to get you through a crisis together, working and focused and synergistic on that. So you can use your cadence of your goal cycle, setting, achieving goals to focus on those things. Now, what can you do with your time? My recommendation would be this. If you could spend even 30 minutes a week in Vital Time, thinking about that goal, planning for that goal, what small steps can I take in the next week to move this closer to a better future, to move us closer to that goal of improving safety or decreasing vacancy rates or whatever. What small step can I make this week? And then each day, do one thing. And I mean, it could take 5 minutes. Don't throw it out the window. Narrow the focus, make it the most important things that are crisis related, and use some Vital Time to think about what can I do, what's working when I am doing it, what can I do next, and each day just make a small step. Do one thing, even if it's one thing a week. But Vital Time and then doing something every single week, it keeps you going forward to a better future. End story. Don't give up your goals. Focus them in new ways and work on them in new ways.
Perfect. And our second recommendation is to act with gratitude and positivity every single day. And the reason why we chose this is because gratitude is one of those things that gives you back twice as much as you give. And also the work of Marty Seligman, who has written several books on the research of just reach out and be grateful, just reach out and be positive today. I mean, he's the guy who came up with the 3 good things. Acting with positivity and gratitude does more for your internal well-being and resiliency than any other thing.
Yeah.
Do we think that you need a personal resiliency plan? Heck yes. You've seen us do 150 lives on that. Like, that's a given. But if you can only do one thing for yourself, there's no exercise, no amount of sleep, and no Brussels sprouts that you're going to eat that do as much for you as I need to reach out and be grateful to someone today. I can't tell you all the leaders that Sue and I have spoken to over the course of the pandemic who are like, oh my goodness, I forgot to show gratitude to the people who stayed. I've been so worried about everyone who's left me that I'm forgetting to show gratefulness to people who stayed.
Who showed up today.
Who showed up today, right? So gratitude, expressing gratitude and positivity every day, even if it's in the morning huddle. Thank you for showing up today. Okay, so let's make this the best day ever, and this is how we're going to do it, people.
Yeah. So. I was on a call with a leader last week who said, maybe it was the week before, who said that, just starting her huddles with positivity, maybe, a win from the day before, or thanking somebody for something, or even just something positive. She said that alone, every meeting, every huddle, that alone is almost like the thing that she thinks is their saving grace during all this, is that positivity of that. And even the initiative, like the employee-driven teams, some organizations are like, well, our employee-driven teams can't meet. Well, guess what? I think most of our partners are showing that maybe not all their teams, but most, if not all their teams, can meet. And the teams say, same thing, is like, we have something positive, forward movement kind of stuff to look forward to. Like,
instead of just worrying about
we love that. Don't take this away from us. Right. Don't tell us that this is our positivity, is to join together in our teams, or but that it might seem like a soft stuff kind of tactic, right? It's not. It's so core to keeping you positive in a pandemic. And even that opening quote about, being a courageous leader, or exercising the courage to lead. I think exercising the courage to be positive, not, illogically positive, in a pandemic, but, what can we be grateful for?
Sure. Absolutely.
We got an application today.
Yeah. Yes, and assign it to an employee. I mean, I work with a team right now that's doing that like, an employee is responsible to bring a positive quote of inspiration to each daily huddle.
It doesn't have
to
the
just, leader.
Yeah, but again, when the leader really leads that, and it's part of what's just expected in the norm, then the employees reflect that same courage and actually participate, and they're engaged and empowered as well. So number 1, goals. It might look different, but keep them in some form or fashion. Number 2, the gratefulness and positivity. And number 3 is rounding, of course, which is all about one-on-one purposeful conversations between a leader and employee. And see, what happens sometimes, and actually even in non-pandemic times, leaders often have this misperception that, especially if they're a leader that works shoulder to shoulder, they're right there in their department, whatever, that makes them very visible and approachable, and that they don't need to round because, they have this, interaction with their employees every single day. Well, that is not the same. That is not the same as rounding one-on-one purposefully, very intended on building relationships, strengthening relationships, and very intentional questioning, and picking out what those questions are. And certainly during, especially if your organization in this crisis is in a staffing crisis, has vacancy rate, turnover, retention concerns or issues, then obviously asking 1 or 2 stay interview questions would be great. So again, doing it very purposefully and intentionally. So maybe you don't ask the questions you always ask. So a lot of organizations have employee rounding questions, and they used to have a routine and a regular system of every employee every month asking these questions. Well, let's get essential, purposeful, and maybe narrow the scope. Maybe we don't ask 4 questions or 5, we ask just 1 or 2. Maybe we don't round on everybody. I can't believe I'm just saying that. Maybe I'm a leader and I have employees, and I'm going to say, you know what, some of them I'm not going to round on.
Be fine if they left, actually.
You know, there might be people like that on your team, but the other thing is there might be people at higher risk for leaving, and or people that if they did leave would make the biggest negative impact on your team, such as single points of failure. A lot of small teams have those, you know, if you only have one person that does this, and if they leave, oh my goodness, you know. Or maybe you have a small team and there's 1 or 2 people that, you know, carry the load of the culture and the work and the positivity and the whatever, and if they left, you know. So if you don't have time to do everyone, don't throw rounding out altogether, right? If you don't have time to ask all the questions, don't throw rounding out altogether. Let's get real. Let's get doable. Let's get focused. Let's get purposeful on who we round with and what questions we ask. And if you're having those people challenges, guess what? That aligns with your goal. So if you have a goal, that's the one thing you're doing, right?
Doing
That's
your
actually
action
part of it.
plan.
You're doing your action plan. If you want to be grateful, you can use that time to show gratitude to that person. Maybe this is where you check in on their well-being as well. Maybe you ask a stay interview question. We'll pop those. We've done that in the group before, but we could pop those in there too. So there's a great tactic that a leader mentioned years ago. You probably remember this, Jane, where she actually took the employees on her team and put them on an index card and put them on one of those little ring holder things, and she put their name on it. And whoever was on the top of the list was that day who she was going to seek out and round with. And she had the questions she was going to ask them right there on that. And once she got that person, she flipped it over. And maybe it wasn't the next day, but the next day she got the next person. So maybe, you know, narrow it down to 4 or 5 key people that you say, hey, I'm going to make sure, if I can't round with everybody, but if you can, right? If you can and you have time, you should. But if you
Don't
can't,
stop if you're already doing it.
If you're already doing it, you should not stop. But follow up and follow through is the secret sauce. So just rounding with them, asking them questions. If there is something important you need to do in follow up, you gotta make sure that you have a way of following through on that as well.
All right. So there you got it. The crisis bundle.
Yes.
You know, do 3 things.
Yeah, and it hits so many things, though, Jane.
Yeah, crazy. Crazy.
Celebration, feedback, recognition, well-being, relationships, grateful. I mean, it
does.
3 things can hit a lot of leadership core practices.